Hey everybody, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where you get to learn everything you want to know about addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Angela Pugh, co-founder of Kansas City Recovery, life coach, and recovering alcoholic. To learn more about me, you can listen to episode 0 on your podcast app or find us on the web at addictionunlimited.com. Hey everybody, Angela Pugh here with Addiction Unlimited. I have a lovely mom here who I've known for several years, Nancy, and she's going to share a little bit of her story with us about her son and their journey through addiction and all the twists and turns and what that looked like. Hello, Nancy. Thank you so much for being here.
You're very welcome. Good to be here.
The main questions for me are, what were the things that made you realize, like, wow, this behavior isn't normal?
Yeah. When you had asked me that before we started this, it's difficult to pinpoint a specific time or, a specific event. But I think for the most part, it was just this hamster wheel of events that just kept going. He would not call and not be in contact. And then all of a sudden it was, hey, Mom, let's get together and can I stay at your house? I realized that the more that was happening, that he was in a bad place. As far as the drinking goes, I recognized that through several different events. And again, nothing that I can specifically pinpoint, but he and a friend had moved out into an apartment. And that's when I knew that the alcohol use had elevated. So after having some discussions with him and his roommate, I realized that this was bigger than I thought it was. I think it's important to point out that, we've had alcoholism in our family. And so I always told both my kids, this may rear its ugly head. And so I felt like, being in touch with my kids and talking to him about that would be helpful to them. And it just wasn't.
Would you say that he had certain behaviors, or were there things that happened that just made you think, wow, that's not quite right? In the 12-step programs, we talk all the time about our lives being unmanageable, and that unmanageable can mean a lot of things. Was he just unstable in what he was doing, or kind of all over the board, or not paying bills, or, you mentioned that he wouldn't be in communication regularly. Like, what were those things for you that you saw that you knew something was going on?
I think it was just the rhythm of not being able to grasp what he was supposed to be, it felt like he was supposed to be doing. That, everybody else, his friends were going to college, they were graduating college, they were doing all of these things that everybody's quote unquote supposed to do, and he just couldn't find his rhythm, which was fine. I just noticed that alcohol was playing a larger and larger part of his, let's call it an escape from having to make those decisions, and then it just got out of control. I think that Zach he's a workhorse. He's funny, he's awesome, he's this terrific guy. Would always show up to work and always take care of business, but just the inability to find what his role in this world was led him to drink more than most people, and then just started to rely on that as an escape.
So for you, what was the last straw? What was the final where you said, that's it, we've got to get some help?
I think we had fallen into a rhythm of last straws, and each time I was believing that this situation was the turning point. It just never was, and the hamster wheel kept turning. I think for us, when you said to me, I think he needs to go far away. He needs to get away from the triggers, away from his circle of friends, and away from what we now refer to as the black hole. I think that was our turning point, because I felt like I had come up with 172,000 different ideas of, this will help. That's, because I'm his mom. I love him. I want to make this better. It's my job to make this better. There's something I'm not thinking about. There's somebody I didn't speak to. There's some book I didn't read. There's something. But when you said that, it's like, oh my gosh, like the skies parted. And then you and I spent those 2 days on the phone with different people around the country. And when we found that place in New Hampshire, that was the turning point. And the cool thing for us is that when I said to Zach, I can't go down with the ship. Here's your choice. There's the sober place in New Hampshire you can go to, or I need to stop contact with you because I can't watch you kill yourself. I was grateful for that because his response was, yes, please, because I don't know how to do this. And he didn't. And that's okay. So that was the turning point. I can still look back and get the warm fuzzies over that time. And he went that next week. It was
interestingly, too, we did try some kind of softer approaches. We did look at him going and doing like a shorter 2-week excursion. I mean, we looked at several different things. And I think even as a professional, I had a turning point in there when I kept meeting with him and we kept talking about the possibilities. And I know at one point I met with him with the computer and opened the computer and showed him all these different options and things he could do and things he could explore. That a lot of them were really fun. They weren't necessarily addiction related, but they were excursions, team building things, self-esteem building things. And even going and kind of showing him in the computer, he wasn't following through. And that was a turning point for me where we would have a discussion, we talk about something and kind of have a plan of action where he needed to take some steps and he wouldn't do it. And we come back together and we talk about it again and he didn't do it. So that's when, for me, I started thinking, you know what? He has to be taken entirely out of his comfort zone, which is the story for most of us, right? I have to get out of my comfort zone. My comfort zone was very drunk and deadly. So my comfort zone was not a good place for anybody. And that's kind of where he was sitting, but he had so much insulation and so much protection that he didn't have the motivation to make a move. And that's when, for me, again, as a professional, I think it was just like, wow, we're going to have to be a little more extreme with this.
Well, when you say protection, because he was so insulated and so protected, you helped me realize that I was one of those protectors of, some people call it enabling. And you helped me realize that even through helping, and I was much better after, visiting with you for, quite a few times, but realizing that even still what I was doing, I was still protecting because I wanted him to get help, but I knew that if I let him go, that something awful would happen. And I just felt like I was his only warrior.
Like you want him to get help, but at the same time, you don't want him to be in some sort of terrible pain, whether that is emotional. I mean, any kind of discomfort, I would imagine as a mom, is a horrible thing to think about for your child.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think that, again, for him and for me, because I was going down with the ship. As a mother bear, you just don't want your kids to hurt. You want them to be successful, meaning competent, confident, a contributing member of society, enjoying their job, but, independent. You want that for them. That's what I was hoping for him. But I think that, too, him going away was the very best thing that could have ever happened. He was surrounded by men who were in a similar situation, who had similar stories, so he wasn't alone physically or in his addiction. And just a phenomenal growth period. He always says, I was born in Kansas City, but I was raised in New Hampshire. I grew up in New Hampshire, excuse me.
That's what I say. That's what I say about AA.
Yeah.
That's where I grew up. That's where I learned to be an adult. That's when I developed my emotional maturity, was sitting in those rooms, being taught by people that had walked the walk before me. Unfortunately, I was already 33 by the time I got there, so I was a little behind the curve.
Hey, as long as you do it. I know people who, are in their 60s, and, it's their first month. And I can't clap loud enough. Everybody has a different story, a different journey.
Yeah. When you sat down to get help, what were you looking for? And everybody hears me say this all the time, that I hear consistently that people don't know what to look for. Like, even though they know they need help, they don't even know who to look up or what what is the job of the person to help them? I don't even know what to Google is what I hear most often. So when you decided you had to get help, what was that like for you? What did you Google, or did you ask friends, or what was your process?
That's so interesting because I felt like I was out in left field. I had no idea. I had spoken to one of his current friends at the time who had told me that he had been drinking extensively and had hurt himself a few times falling. And I went home and I pulled out my Mac and I sat there going, what do I even Google? And I threw out alcoholic counselor. Okay, that's a good place to start. And so there's these different faces and this different, and several of them were very clinical. And I think you were the third or fourth person down, and there was your smiling face and said something to the extent of, and I'm sure I'm going to kill this, but I can help because I've been there. I've been in the darkness, or I've been something. I don't know what it was, but I'm like, ooh. It was probably 11 o'clock at night. I called the phone number, and you called me back first thing in the morning. We spoke for 2 hours. I made an appointment with you, and it was never about the time, 55 minutes, we got to go. But it was, how can I help? Tell me your story. And there the relationship began. But I had no idea. So, anybody out there who doesn't know what to Google, you Google Angela Pugh. and I swear the seas will part, the angels will sing, and there your journey shall begin, because it's, again, as you mentioned at the beginning, we've been friends for years. You're a part of my story. You're a part of our world. You are a godsend, truly.
Oh, thank you.
So,
thank you. It's so, on my side, it's so easy, because I would imagine that addicted people are pretty frustrating to people that aren't addicted.
Let's see, that's one word.
But I have to be honest, I love us. I think we are incredible, and we're funny, and we're smart, and our brains definitely work differently. And for me, in recent years especially, my practice and my learning really has shifted to understand kind of the internal processes, because for me, when I was newly sober, understanding how my brain was wired differently is what made me feel like I was fixable. It made me feel like I wasn't damaged beyond repair. Mm. But now I know what that wiring is like and where my brain is different. And I was like, okay, well, now I know what to do. Now I can take an approach, a behavioral approach even, to start correcting some of that stuff that's really habit that I just did for so many years that it became second nature, right? Like any other habit. And for me, that's what makes it so easy to work with addicted people, not only because we speak the same language and we have the same brand of crazy. Our personalities really are very similar regardless of our circumstances as addicts. So it's just so fun to me, but I can just see in those behaviors, and it just makes so much sense to me what the next step is. What is the next thing to do? What is the next right thing? Whatever. It just seems so, and it's fun. It's fun working with addicted people. I know most people would disagree, but I love us. I think we're great.
Well, I almost every time I go to an open AA meeting, when it comes time to say something, I always say out loud how grateful I am for the authenticity of the room, for the stories, for their honesty. And as you've said before, and I totally agree, is that I think everyone could benefit by going to these meetings, because it's just so empowering. But I think there's a lot of power in just being honest.
Yeah.
And just being, if you just speak your truth, no matter what it is, in any conversation, in any relationship, you speak the truth, it's just good.
And in those rooms, we can speak our truth and be honest, and we have acceptance, which was always my fear, for sure. Like, I could speak my truth, but, non-addicted people will want to have me arrested. And that's a very different feeling than when I speak my truth in AA. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, I did the same thing. There's a certain acceptance in there that is so nice and so healing for us. When you were looking for professionals, I know you mentioned you read my profile, and I said, of course, that I'm a recovering alcoholic as well. Were there other things that were important to you when you were looking at professionals? Were there things that you thought were important to you that maybe ended up not being so important?
Well, as I mentioned, I scrolled down, saw your face, and then never turned back because, again, the thing that is so important for me is to be able to relate. It's the relationship. And you make it so easy to have that relationship. It wasn't about business. It wasn't about, the hour. It wasn't about one and done. We've had this. Okay, he's out there. There was so much follow-up, not only with me, but with my son when he was in New Hampshire. That's huge. So we had seen counselors over the years. Family counselors were a divorced family, and there was never that personal connection. So what makes, like I said, I didn't look any further, so I can't really compare except for the counselors that we had seen before, is that you become a part of our journey.
Yeah.
You're not separate from, and that's huge. In my business, same thing. It's all about relationship. Does the money come? Yes, but that's not the focus.
Yeah.
It's about how can we help you with this transition? How can we be a part of that? How can we make it easier for you? So I think that relationship is the key word, and there's no substitute for that.
So I want to make sure we fit in here too. Before we started recording, we were talking, and you had mentioned something that a counselor said to you that really put things in perspective. And I love hearing these little sort of anecdotes because for me, I'm not a parent, right? I'm a really fabulous dog mom. So sometimes
Yes, you are.
I have to remind myself that I don't have kids, and this connection with parents and children is a different connection. And I have to really remind myself to honor that because I just don't have that, And I loved what this counselor said to you, and I want you to share it because I think it's such a powerful statement that I think anybody listening to this, any parents for sure, could relate to.
It was probably about 3 years before I met you and before we got to the black hole part of our journey. And I was so frustrated because of several different situations, but I kept thinking I am missing something. That's what's the magic. There's a key, and I just don't know what it is yet. And the counselor was saying to me that this is going to be his decision. You can't make that decision for him. And I said to him, and I was so angry, and I said, the worst thing that is going to happen is I'm going to be at my son's funeral, and I'm going to think of something else I could have done. And he kind of laughed at me a little bit and said, no, Nancy, the worst thing that's going to happen is that he will be at your funeral because you died of a heart attack thinking that you could have done something to save him. And that was pretty pivotal. And even after hearing that and feeling it and absorbing it, it wasn't really until our conversations where you kind of sat back and a little bit cocky going, well, so make the choice. It wasn't, well, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. It was, okay, here's what this looks like. You can choose to continue to enable. I'm not enabling. Yes, you are. You can continue to think that you are going to change this for him, or you can step back and let him go. But I'm the only one that's fighting for him, and okay, here's how it looks. It's just huge. It's such a
Well, the thing was, I know you will fight to the end of the earth for him. What we needed was for him to start fighting for himself.
Yes.
And he just didn't have any space to do that because he had never been nudged that direction. Mm-hmm. He was insulated and he was protected, and he knew that he really could sit back and not do anything, and everybody around him would continue to work for his life.
Yes.
He just had never had to really step up and fight for himself. And that's why it was so important that he go away where he really was on his own 2 feet, really.
Yes. And even since then, and we have such a fantastic relationship now because it is a relationship, and there's not a lot of BS and things, but he did say that us alcoholics will tell you anything you want to hear.
Yeah.
So I'm looking back at the years. It's an interesting journey, but I will say that, to any parent out there listening, just know that what we believe is help isn't. It enables them to continue the facade, to continue the game, and it doesn't help them. Doesn't help them become independent adults. So if they're living in your house, rent-free, and they have a job, but they get to spend money. Oh, well, right now he's not able to. He's 22, he's 26, he's 30, he's 35. If I had 3 words, all I'd say is call Angela Pugh. No, I'd say 4. Call Angela Pugh now. Where's your phone number? I need to give that out.
It's seriously. Everywhere, I promise you. My contact
Google
information is not hard to find.
Well, and it's not only just with the counseling, or I always call you a life coach, and I think you told me that from the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm not this, I'm not that. I'm a life coach. I've been
for me, that was the very beginning of my career before I ever started doing interventions, before I ever went to college and got my counselor credentials and all that education. I started as a coach. That's what I started doing. And it's interesting. I was talking to somebody about this last night at an event, and I said, out of all the training that I've done and all of the education that I have, the most valuable tools in my toolbox are my life coaching tools. And I'm so glad that through the course of my career, I've always kept up on coaching and what that looks like and the different modalities of coaching and the different tools you use in that practice, because they are my most valuable parts.
And it's not just about the counseling, the coaching, the appointments, I guess. Yours is about the whole of addiction, by opening the Sober Living House. And so grateful for that. Where my son lives now, there's this phenomenal group of men. It's just an amazing place for them to live as, in this, I hate this word, but fellowship. There is empowerment in that as well. But you're always thinking of the next something that can help people with addiction overcome their addiction. And that's what one of the things I so love about you is that you're always involved, whether it's, with one of the local walks or, again, the house, the this, the that, talking to, going, out of state to go to different meetings and conventions and learning. At the bottom line is just to help addicts heal.
And their families.
And their families. I'm raising my hand right now. You can't see it, but I'm raising my hand. Oh, absolutely, because it affects the whole family.
Huge.
It affects the whole family, and that's what's so amazing as well. I'm just grateful.
Well, I'm glad that you talked about that enabling part too, because that is one of the biggest conversations I have on a daily basis is enabling. And really, what is it? I think people don't understand that a lot of the small things that we do on a daily basis are enabling things as well. And I think there's a very thin line between parenting and enabling. It is a very, very thin line, and it's hard to not cross it. But I think on the addiction side of it, what I see is it damages our self-esteem, because if I don't learn how to do for myself, if I don't learn how to make the phone calls and make the appointments and schedule my time and show up where I'm supposed to, and if I don't learn how to utilize my paycheck to pay my bills and be responsible for things, well, then I'm definitely going to be in a failure to launch situation, because I have no idea how to go out in the world. And then I don't feel good about myself because I don't have any skills. So how can I feel confident to go out in the world when I've been insulated and had everything done for me? And you see it in every relationship, right? Not just parents and kids, for sure, but you see it in marriages as well. People become very enabling for one another. But on the addiction side, I think that's the part that makes me the most sad and I find myself doing the same thing in the sober living. I mean, you have definitely caught me getting in that, enabling.
Which is fun to bust you on that.
Yeah, sure, because I just want so badly for those boys to just be happy and comfortable and healthy. And I want them to get all the benefits that I've gotten from this phenomenal sober life. I want them to have all of that. And it's so important how they do things on a daily basis to really start to rebuild that self-esteem. And they get scared, right? If they've been in these enabling situations and they've never had to do for themselves, then they're overwhelmed with fear and they don't believe in themselves that they can do it. And it's one of the hardest parts to overcome, but it is such an important piece of the puzzle. And I just love for everybody to have a little more knowledge about enabling and how tiny those behaviors are, but they can have such a big impact if we're not really pushing them and challenging them to do for themselves.
I so agree. And it's not just my situation, but other mothers that I've spoken to, because I get calls or talking to different people over the years. The enabling can be as simple as, well, he has to have a car to get to work, or he has to have money for this, or he has to have, well, he can't afford to move out, so therefore, all these different things where we feel we, meaning parents, should supply because they are our children, to know that line between the parent and the enabling. But I promise you, it's the small things that become big things that become a 45-year-old child living in your home.
Absolutely true.
And he just needs people like Angela Pugh to say, no more. I'm teasing. Like I said, I'm very lucky that my son was saying, you bet, don't know how to do this. I'm in, and he is doing so well now. He's it's just a great time.
When you look back over the course of the last few years and really going through all of this to the place where your son now is about to celebrate 2 years sober.
Yay.
In just a couple of weeks, what is something you know now that you wish you would have known in the beginning?
Oh, that's tough. I just wish I knew. I wish I knew other people. When I was first realizing that this was as big as it was, I knew no one. And then I knew no one. I didn't know where to go. I felt so alone. I just wish that I knew of you or of groups, or I didn't even think about Al-Anon at the time. That would have been a good place to start. Also, recognizing earlier that I wasn't helping. I was just extending his time as an alcoholic. But I swear to you, I thought I was helping.
Yeah, because the more comfortable we make them, we're just allowing them to be comfortable continuing to make poor choices.
Yes.
That's what it comes down to.
And that's just not in addiction. It's just parent to child. And I say child, the child can be 7, the child can be 17, 27 or older. They don't have to be an addict. If the sooner we give them the tools and challenge them to be independent, the better off they will be as an adult.
Even as adults, we have to believe in ourselves that we can do it. Mm-hmm. But if I've never had to do it, then how do I trust me that I can do it?
But I remember when the kids were young, as soon as they could reach the counter, I'd have them ordering their own food at McDonald's. I would have them introducing themselves, teaching them how to do a handshake like my dad did.
Right.
And looking them in the eye and doing all that stuff. I thought I was on top of it. I'd also like to say to moms that go take a breath, go easy on yourself. I know addicts of phenomenal mothers who were the best moms in the world. I know addicts who have parents who weren't there. There's so many different. Do not be so hard on yourself. Reach out to your friends. Reach out to your village, to your family if they're there. Reach out. Just reach out.
It was surprising to me in the beginning of my sobriety. I remember my mom sitting with me at one point and she was crying. And she said, I just wish I knew what I could have done differently.
Yes.
And I was shocked because I couldn't figure out how she thought she had anything to do with it. I was like, what? I mean, a lot of my drunkenness, I didn't even live in the same state. Like, I moved across the country. So I couldn't figure out how she even connected that she had some responsibility in it. And again, I think it's one of those things because I'm not a mom. So that doesn't make sense to me, But for her, she did. It just shocked me how much responsibility she tried to take of it. And I was like, this has nothing to do with you. Like, this was me. These were my choices. And, there are, even as a drunk, it's like I had certain points in my journey that I was at a crossroads. There were many times I could have made different choices. There were many times even when I knew I had a problem, and maybe I couldn't label it alcoholism, right? I didn't know enough necessarily to know that that's what was wrong with me, but I knew it was not right. I knew that what I was doing and how I was living my life was not right. I knew that I wasn't happy. I knew I didn't feel good about myself. There were so many times that I stood at that crossroads and I made the choice to continue drinking because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how to stop it. I certainly didn't think I couldn't stop it, but I felt like it was solely my responsibility. And what I've learned now, obviously many years of doing this as my work too, every parent on the planet thinks that they had some role in our addiction as their kids. And
oh, absolutely, because that bond is so strong. It's so strong, and there is a never-ending responsibility and love and connection that you feel like you are the sole motivator. What I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Well, and protector.
That's it. Real quickly, I want to say that there's one group that you introduced me to this past year and a half, was Shatterproof. Shatterproof? Is that
Shatterproof, uh-huh.
Yes. And basically the whole gist of this, I believe this is correct, is shattering the stigma of addiction. And the guy's story, and I think this is correct, but he had a son who was an addict, alcoholic. I can't remember what it was, but he said one of the big eurekas for him was there was another child, same school, down the street who had cancer. And people were contacting the family and saying, hey, let me drive carpool. I'm going to bring over a roast. How can I help? Let me do your grocery shopping. Let me clean your house. Let me do your laundry. That child had a disease. His child had a disease, but no one was calling. I just want people to know that it's not an embarrassment. It's not anything to be shameful of. The people that I've spoken with so proudly say, my daughter is graduating from UMKC and my son is almost 2 years sober. And they kind of back off a little bit. One person said, just one person, this was last year, oh, I'm so sorry. And he said, why would you be sorry? I said, are you kidding me? This is so awesome. But other people are like, yeah, that's so cool. But there was been several people, oh my God, well, my sister or my son or my daughter or my cousin, we just don't even know where to turn. We don't know what to, and of course I pass on your information, but I just know when the word embarrassed or shameful or all of these, why? Reach out for help. Tell somebody, call you, call me. I'll talk to you. Just call, reach out, say it out loud, begin the journey. Because as my son says, it's so much better on the other side.
So much better. I mean, honestly, being an alcoholic is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And that doesn't mean that it always felt good.
Yeah.
But it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I mean, it's what gave me my life. It's what allowed me to become a person I never thought I could be. It's what led me to live my passion. It brought me all of that.
Yeah.
If I would have never been a raging drunk, I'd probably be really sad and angry and unhappy and drunk.
And you're not. Well, your being an alcoholic has really helped us too, so thanks.
So, what is your most valuable lesson in the whole thing now? You're sitting with your son, 2 years sober. What's been the most valuable lesson?
Honestly, my most valuable lesson has been the strength of my faith, very honestly, because I went through some really dark times and a lot of yelling at God because I couldn't imagine why He would allow such emptiness and pain for my son, for my family. But I very honestly know that this is His journey, and I have learned to praise Him in the storm. I am grateful for so much. I'm so grateful for where we are right now. And similar to that is that I know I can't manage somebody else's situation. And that's with both my kids and other people as well. First 3 chapters of the book, Boundaries. We're pointing fingers. If they would do this, if this would happen, if they would just something. No, it's not that. It's what are you allowing for yourself?
Boundaries are good and necessary.
Just thanks to you, thanks to God, thanks to my village. I am here having this fabulous conversation with you and watching Henry sleep.
Yeah, Henry, hard at work as always. Well, thank you again for sharing your story. I so appreciate it. We have to get at the same thing in breaking down that stigma, and I love that organization, Shatterproof. Shatterproof is organizing events across the country, and I think they're doing more each year. And I'm on the organizing committee for the next Kansas City event this year.
Oh, that's right.
So, yeah,
I want to help.
It'll be a good time. It was a really fun event last year. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nancy, for sharing your story. And there's so many lessons to learn in this process, and we just like to share as much information as we can. And thank you.
You've reached the end of another great episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. Candid and honest conversation about addiction and recovery. Be sure to visit us at addictionunlimited.com to join the conversation and access show notes and links to everything we talked about. Love this episode? Please take 30 seconds to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes to help us improve and give you the information you want. Thanks for listening. See you next week.